Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I had a pretty good day, given the circumstances. I think I'm just going to put a voiceover that I just did for my playlist at the end of this video, and that'll talk about that. I had another little episode, not as bad as the other ones, and it kind of got resolved, and I did the meditation. I think it was just an intense day. Um, it was still Saturday, February 28th, but it's 11 o'clock, so this day is almost over. And I haven't checked the news in a while. I'm not sure what's going on and what's escalating and what's happened. But I just wanted to say this. We've seen this with all of these wars. The wars in Libya, the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq. They're all failures, right? So America had success going in and doing army stuff, killing people and taking over territory and occupying territory. But after that, it was complete failure. And all these wars have failed. Iraq is a mess. Libya is a mess. Iran is going to be a mess. Um, Afghanistan's a mess, right? We had to withdraw, spend a lot of money, killed a lot of people, lost American soldiers, gave away a lot of treasure and equipment, and the place is worse off now than it was before, more destabilized. Nothing's been settled, regime change, but nothing there, other than the profit that's made by war, the war profiteer, all those kind of things, but nothing in terms of, you can't look at any of those things as success. Remember George W. Bush, he had this thing where he was on the deck of an aircraft carrier and it said mission accomplished. But what happened was America went in and the troops, the elite Iraqi Republican Guard and all these various, Iraqi troops just withdrew and faded away. They put away their uniforms, they, hid their weapons and things, and they folded back into the population. And America thought that they had, basically surrendered and there was going to be no resistance, but then they had all those militia type of, insurgent wars that America isn't good at fighting. America's good at fighting in other military. They're not trained for this door-to-door disarming of people. So eventually they made a deal with the Republican Guard and they became ISIS. You remember that. And they gave them an oil field and the place is destabilized. But you can't call any of that a success. 1 million dead Iraqis and just, no purpose to it. And, Trump is a loser and just a horrible person. And he is a failure. And this war didn't come about for any organic reason. And it's, the only thing that you can say is based in God, backed by God, is that's there to destroy America and destroy the paradigm. I talk about how there's been a shift. I feel there's a shift. Personally, everything's changed, not because of this war, but because it was just this day. There's these days in your life where nothing's the same afterwards. And I feel like this period of time that I've gone through, the playlist I put together about the fear, cleaning out the fear and stuff, and the gratefulness meditation. And I talk about this. You can hear it I'm going to put that voiceover. Hopefully I'll remember to put that voiceover in the video at the end of the thing. Again, it's 11 o'clock at night, but hopefully I'll remember tomorrow. Because this video is not going to get up till Monday, but hopefully I'll do it first thing in the morning and I'll figure that out. But anyways, this thing's going to end badly. And there's the prophecies and the things that are here for the Whispers of Brighter World and the work that's being done to make all these changes and to get rid of a demonic system and bring in something better. That's going to happen. And so, I didn't know whether this prophecy was going to be to the day. And it it was to the day. I mean, today's the day that started. And I didn't know what kind of thing it was going to be. Like, I didn't know it was going to be a solar flare or a nuclear bomb or alien invasion, whatever it might be. There's some kind of big event. And, it could be something where everybody, freaks the fuck out and goes to grocery stores like it did with COVID. And, that's it. Like, the system as we now know it is not available anymore. And, I was worried about that. So since that didn't happen, we have more time. Like, I feel like there's a sense of urgency and, a sense of urgency for people to connect to the divinity within them. Maybe the people are feeling that. I don't know. Certainly for me to dive deeper into my spiritual practice and my wife and I to set up our homestead better and do what we got to do. do the things we need to do to prepare for what's coming. It's always good to have some kind of, you know, be willing to adjust yourself, and we have more time. Like we have more time, and I don't know how much more time, but there's more time, right? We don't know if it was going to be economic collapse or depression. Like I didn't know. For 20 years I knew something was coming. I didn't know what it was and how it would manifest, and now you can kind of see it unfolding. So in all that, um, it's just that this isn't going to end well, and it can't, because how could it, right? I'm pretty tired now. Let me just I'll continue this on tomorrow, but I just wanted to say that. All right, so that's it for now. Okay, so Sunday, March 1st, and the supreme leader. They got the supreme leader. He's no longer the supreme leader. He's dead. I got some stuff with Tucker Carlson, and one thing with Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, and Tucker Carlson with Catherine Austin Fitz and Don Lemons and some other things. And one of the things that I have here is a unique perspective that you won't hear from anybody else in terms of the spiritual interpretation, the Sajmark interpretation of this, right? And so this thing that's happening now with World War III, and there's a Saturday Night Live thing where they're talking about World War III. They won't mention Israel, but at least the part of the sketch that I saw. Of course they don't. They'll never will. Because of their being owned. But they're missing some things, which I'm going to talk about on a material level, just in terms of what they won't say or what they don't see or whatever. But in terms of the spiritual stuff, there is a completely different perspective about everything. Because on the spiritual level, everything is for good. Everything that happens here, no matter how miserable, no matter how unfair, no matter how shitty, is for your betterment and your own spiritual evolution. There's nothing happens randomly, and it's all, it's orchestrated in some way. And so the spiritual perspective about this is, in 1950, I believe it is, in 1954, Ramchandra Babaji, who didn't want to write books, wrote a series of books, and one of them was published in 1954, which is called Reality at Dawn. It's the first book in the when they published the complete works of Ramchandra. He wrote 5 books, and he didn't want to write books. He was not a writer, but everyone wanted books because every spiritual organization has books, and so he prayed. There was things that he was just not. He didn't feel like he was capable of. And he prayed, and this was given to him, basically channeled, like just stuff that was sent from above, and his own experiences as well as part of it. But so they're very unique books, and they're about 120 pages each, small books. At the end of this book, he talks about my vision, and where other religions and other spiritual, whatever it is, it's prophecies. Like you have prophet, right? The Prophet Muhammad, these people who could see the future. But in this case, there were things he was ordered to do, right? He was ordered to do these things. And then he wrote about them. Like this was stuff he was getting instructions from these divine beings that were wanting to, do something to change the trajectory of the earth, right? There are people that are here, higher developed souls. And, if you can look at people who are, like you go to Walmart, you look around, and you look at dumb fuck people, like people without abstract thought, people who are simple. I was traveling through India, and there's these people there that were living like in huts by the roadside. They were about 5 foot tall, skinny, no protein. They're vegetarian, and they don't have access to protein, and they don't. They're eating mostly rice and no education. No school. They're illiterate, right? And let's say I spoke their language, because they don't. If they spoke English, they wouldn't understand American English. We couldn't have a conversation. Like we couldn't. They're not capable of understanding, this kind of whatever it is. And you see these people that just are not on your level of evolution. There's people like this all over the world, people that you see all the time, that just don't have the level of consciousness. It's not like you're better than them. You're just farther along your spiritual journey. And if you understand the difference between you and them, then you can understand the difference between you and these spiritual beings that come down, higher developed souls, that have the capacity to do work, control the weather and just with their thought force and, do work and change things and change the, just structure things on a divine level beyond anybody's ability to control the controllers. Like they can make Donald Trump start World War III, right? Like one of the things that Babaji was ordered was to start World War II. He got directions to start War II to make, the narrative happen, whatever happened, so the conditions would happen. That World War II, like there was things he was ordered to do to get the British out of India. Like that was, he did the spiritual work to make that happen. Nobody knows who he is, right? But he was orchestrating these events. And, this thing that's happening right now was part of that work, right? There was stuff that he was doing to manifest whatever the stuff was, right? The things necessary for the work to happen. So this stuff that's happening now with Trump and all the things that were predicted in Whispers of the Brighter World, you make what's called a sankalpa, like a strong spiritual will, and you manifest something. And so, this had to happen, and it makes sense to me. Like I understand it. Like I cover the depravity of the world every day, and the leadership, and the all the things. You guys. I mean, all the stuff from Hollywood to sports to certainly politics and world events, and just all these people and the rich and powerful people and their and the people, everybody else going in the wrong direction, to the dumb fuckery, the stupidity, the lack of desire to connect with their higher nature, going to the lowest common denominator. I mean, I see it every day. We're going in the wrong direction. And all of us who are older, the older you are, the more degradation you see. You saw what it was when you grew up, and it wasn't great then. Like it wasn't, it was a fucked up world, and it's gotten more fucked up, and the people have gotten weaker and weaker. So we're going in the wrong direction. And almost everybody can agree with that. But very few people want what it's going to take to reverse that. Clearly, this system has to go. It's not like it can be patched up or it can be reversed. I mean, the people have to change dramatically. We need motivation to change. We have to give up our wrong way of living, our egotistical ways of living. And right now, people aren't motivated to do that at all. Even people who are embracing their spiritual journey, all of us who, work to connect to the divinity within us, it's very difficult. Like I struggle all the time with it. It's not, we stick our toe in the water and we're making some progress, but it's not, the motivation isn't there to really dive in and just go for it because, we have to live in this world and, it's just, the world's very alluring and it pulls you away from, it's always fighting against your soul and your spiritual nature. So like, that's where we're at. And, I see this, I think, as well as anybody, and I understand it and get it. I'm going to read this excerpt. I got my microphone stand ready to go. Kind of got it to work. And I'm going to read the whole chapter here. I need to put this somehow I need to have like a Whispers of the Brighter World playlist with all that stuff. I think I already do. Let me see. If I do, I'll put this in there. But the chapter that I'm about to read to you, it will be about how this work was being manifested by Babaji himself, who's writing about it, right? He was ordered to do this work. Now, me knowing that this is right, like I know that this just has to be taken down, and I know it needs to create, hardship and difficulties. And I was talking about this in my last voiceover, which I'll put at the end of this video, my last voiceover for the fear and anxiety cleaning that I did, the 7-day sitting thing. It's things that are painful are really beneficial on your spiritual journey. Painful emotionally, painful egotistically, painful physically, all these things. Pain is a great way to mold somebody and motivate them and motivate yourself, and these traumas and difficulties that are going to be unleashed on the world are going to help people to gravitate towards God. Also, trauma and things that are intense things really clear your head and make you aware of what's important, what's not, right? And we gauge a lot of like bullshit, superficial, non-important shit, and we don't want to get rid of it. We don't want to we like it, but it's it's holding us back, right? And so like for an example, this heart thing I'm going through, I'm not loving it, but I believe that there's a reason for it, right? There's some reason. It's not at random. It's helping me in some way. and spiritually more than anything else. There has been some things, I'm tied to all these things that's going on with the world and the whispers and all the stuff. And, I'm experiencing something personally that's difficult to go through. And, it has spiritual benefit, but on an egotistical level, you just want it to stop. Like, you can know that it's for your best interest. You know what God's giving it to you, but you're like, please, it's enough, right? I've had enough. So, so there's always these perspectives. There's what is good for you, and it's but the egotistical human part of you having to suffer through it. We all know that we're going to die, but nobody wants to, right? Unless you're suicidal or something like that. But that's not the, that's just like the world, you being miserable, and your desire for survival, your survival instinct, and all these things are being overridden by just being beaten down, and all the things that happen to you that make it more acceptable to die than keep on going, right? That's what suicidal people are. But in terms of initially nobody wants to die, but it's there for all of us, and it's for our best interest. Okay, so this perspective that this stuff that's happening and the collapse of our system is a good thing, needs to be there. Like, you have to balance it out with your ego's reaction, which is, holy shit, this is going to suck for me, right? Because on a material level, this is going to suck for all of us on some level. We're not going to have the same life. We might, and some of us will embrace the new life and thrive. So there'll be some people who it will be better for. For the majority of people, though, not. Especially as you get older, you're more set in your ways, and you just don't have the capacity and the energy to change that, to change your lifestyle that much. Okay, so here it is, Chapter 10, My Vision. The world these days is passing through a critical stage. The political situation is growing extremely intricate day by day. The economic condition has become very depressing. Moral, religious, and social degradation has also reached its final limit. An atmosphere of rivalry, unrest, and insecurity prevails everywhere. Every nation looks with jealous eyes upon her neighbor and utilizes all her resources in finding other out means of exploiting it. The statesmen of the world are not quite ignorant of these facts. They are trying every means to reach a satisfactory solution of the various problems confronting the world, but the efforts of all the organizations set up for this purpose do not appear to bring forth encouraging results on the whole. The problem of world peace, so prominent in the minds of the greatest politicians and statesmen, is a mere illusion or mirage. The state of affairs in India does not hold out any bright prospect. Dissensions and party feelings are prevalent everywhere in the country. Self-interest is predominant. Moral principles are neglected. The problem of bread and butter is acute. But in spite of all these, some of us think that the country is progressing. The sign of progress that they take to be the gradual drifting of the country towards a Western type of civilization, which is based on pure materialism. But now the age of materialism must come to an end. The old order must change, yielding place to new. The present structure of the world civilization based on electricity and atomic energy shall not remain in existence for long. So again, this was written in, it was published in 1954. The present structure of world civilization based on electricity and atomic energy shall not remain in existence for long. It is destined to fall soon. The whole world atmosphere is so much charged with poisonous effects of absolute materialism that it is almost beyond human control. To be clear, the time is also matured for a change which is imminent and inevitable, and for which the godly energy in human form is already at work, as referred to in my book, Efficacy of Raja Yoga. These books are all available on PDF, the complete works of Ramchandra. You can read these in there are two different places. There are PDF files on these books. There's 5 books. It may not, they're free for people to just read. It may not at present seem convincing to some of us, but it is a fact beyond doubt. The world will know of him and his work in respect after some time, when events have sufficiently come to light. Godly work is always accomplished through the agency of some human being of high caliber, and not directly. The reason is that God does not possess mind, which is the only instrument to bring these things into action. Man possesses mind which can be utilized for this purpose, but only when he has lost his feeling of individuality in toto. What remains in him after he has achieved complete negation of self is not the human mind, but only the godly mind in its pure and absolute state. Now nature works through the godly mind, although apparently it exists within the frame of a human being. So he's talking about here is when you give up your individuality and your individual ability to choose the wrong thing, that you are now able to just receive God's orders and be a perfect servant because you don't have a choice. You've given up your choice to make mistakes. You've given up your choice to fail. You've given up your choice for selfishness and whatever it is, and you just do whatever God wants you to do. And so that's what he's talking about there. I present before the readers a glimpse of the world that is to be, as I see it in my vision, believe it or not, but this is my reading of nature in the clairvoyant state. Signs are evident that the destruction of the undesirable elements in the world has already commenced. Such examples occurred many a time before during the period of existence of the world. Rama's war against Ravana, Noah's flood, and the battle of the Mahabharata are some of the many instances. Such destruction is accomplished through various means. It may be through war or internal feud, through heavenly calamities such as a volcanic upheaval, or through other similar causes. The time is now ripe for the final phase, and the world is rushing towards it with headlong speed. The action may come into full swing by the close of the present century, but some of the events enumerated below may take a longer time to come into effect. So he was talking about 2000, like the end of this century would be the year 2000, but because this was again written in the 1900s. There was a period of time where the third master said that he was told that doomsday had been postponed. So this was supposed to happen. There was supposed to be a nuclear war like in the 70s or 80s with Russia that was delayed for various reasons. But it was kind of on the schedule. But now it's been pushed back to now. The heat of the sun is gradually diminishing for time past, and it may be a baffling problem for the scientists to tackle. After some time, life on the surface of the earth may become quite impossible, owing to insufficient heat in the sun. No solution of it is within their mental approach, in spite of all the material powers at their command. I may assure them that it will not at present diminish to that extent. The present decrease in the sun's heat is meant only to expedite nature's process of change, and the personality deputed for the work is utilizing it for the purpose. So what's happening is the sun's energy is being diverted towards the destruction and stuff here. It's an unfailing sign of the imminent upheaval in the entire structure of the world, and after it the sun will again resume its full glow. The same sign will appear again at the time of the Mahaparala, in parentheses, the complete dissolution. That's the dissolution of the universe, when the universe implodes back inside itself. But as it is a far-off thing. I do not like to dwell upon it here. One thing I may disclose in this connection for the interest of the readers, at the time of the Mahaparala, the pole star will deviate a few degrees from its position and will grow a bit hotter. A powerful energy in the form of gas will begin to gush out of it and will ultimately destroy the world and everything else in existence. The action of destruction will start from the North Pole. In consequence of the present upheaval, drastic changes will come in the effect, and new structure of the world will be quite different from the one we see today. The fate of Great Britain will be sad. A part of it, its southern portion, will sink into sea. A volcanic energy is in the latent state is at work in the heart of London. In the course of time, it will burst forth in the force of volcanic eruption. The Gulf Stream will change its course, and the country will become extremely cold. The fate of Europe, too, will be similar. Smaller countries will lose their existence. The future of Russia is in darkness. She cannot survive. The very weapon of Russia will serve as her pistol at her own hand. Communism shall have its grave in its own homeland. As for America, she is in imminent danger of losing her wealth, and in due course of time, she may almost be reduced to paupery. Her power and greatness, too, will sink along with it. India will regain her pristine glory, and she will rise to prominence under her own government. Her suzerainty will extend far and wide, and the world will look up to her for a beacon of light. but she too will have her share of world upheaval. The germs of rebellion are developing the country. A part of the country, the eastern portion of Bengal, will sink into the sea. Volcanic energy is also active and may seriously affect some parts of it, especially the state of Bihar. The Deccan Plateau may, in the remote future, turn into an island. That's where the Kana ashram is. There'll be enormous bloodshed all over the world. This is the part that's like kind of the most important part. This is the end of it. There'll be enormous bloodshed all over the world, and the loss of life through various causes will be so great that the world population will be considerably reduced. The new structure of the coming world will stand on the bones and ashes. A type of civilization based on spirituality will spring forth in India and will in due course become the world civilization. No country or nation will survive without spirituality as its base, and every nation will sooner or later adopt the same course if it wants to maintain her very existence. So there's these two things, right? Those people who can understand this or believe it in its possibility and can see what's happening in the world or whatever. You can see the world suck. And you can see that there doesn't seem to be any hope for it changing. And yet, when you're given, what needs to happen to change it and what needs to happen to the world and, massive population reduction and destruction and all kinds of things and, to motivate people to embrace their higher nature, which is what we're talking about here. And I can say 100%, with 100% certainty, almost nobody really wants to embrace their higher nature. There are people who are spiritual seekers and people who it's a hobby. It's like who dabble in it, like me and other people. But, in terms of what really it takes to become, what you need to become, that's, not possible. Like, it's just people just can't do it. And, that's just reality. So something has to change, something drastic just to change to where people are motivated to make that choice because they can't be forced. You have to make the choice, but right now the conditions are there that you won't make that choice. In the world we live in now, people are pulled away from their spiritual nature and their soul's path by our current structure of civilization, and we have these tendencies. So we have to, we have potential and unrealized potential. And so I understand that this has to happen. But on a human level, I'm not looking forward to it. Like I am and I'm not. Like, it's like something that's just hanging over there, hanging over our heads. So like, all right, let's just get it over with, right? But on a, egotistical level, it's always hard. And so that's where we're at right now. All right, so that's good for the introduction, and let's get into the stuff here. I have over the years established that I will, if I like something or I think something's good, despite how much of a piece of shit the person is, if they have a moment, because people, even the worst people do the right thing at some point, or they're, people have good and bad in them. It's always a battle for everybody. And sometimes their higher nature emerges or they just do, really good work, masterful work. And, Tucker Carlson's been one of those people, Joe Rogan to some extent, where they once in a while will produce a good interview or, Tucker Carlson's interview with, whatever that guy, Ted Cruz, was great. I mean, good, it's entertaining as well. And the thing that Tucker Carlson's done the best is when he presented a detailed analysis of Israel's relationship with America, right? It's not the kind of video I would make anymore. Like, I don't like to do deep research into just policy. And, I'm over that stuff because, I already know stuff, so I don't have to, I don't have to do all that. I don't need to be convinced, right? And so, when you need to be convinced, you'll look into things more. And otherwise, it's just kind of a waste of time. Like, you're just getting more information about what you already know. But what he did was great. It was an amazing thing. He detailed, what Israel was as an economy, what they were as a partner, as an ally, and they have nothing to offer America, right? It's a one-sided relationship. And he said something in there where he's going to reverse it now, right? And so, as much as I said he did a good job with that, it doesn't play out until in his mentality here, this is a moment, right? This is a moment here. And it's time to fucking tell everyone that Trump's a piece of shit. Like, it just is. And here it is.
Who benefits if we bomb Iran? This is scary. Okay, Here's the latest. We have the largest force amassed in the Middle East since 2003. The deployment is unlike anything the U.S. has done since 2003 when it amassed the forces behind the invasion of Iraq. We've shifted more than 150 aircraft to bases in Europe and the Middle East. I don't know how you pronounce it, but there's an airbase we have in Jordan that's been a key destination for U.S. air assets streaming into the region. More than 60.
I think this is right before that. This is the day before. I think this was Friday.
Planes were visible in satellite imagery taken Friday. More than a dozen F-35 fighter jets lined up on a tarmac. Roughly a third of all active U.S. ships are now in the region. Warships in the area also equipped with hundreds of Tomahawk missiles. Aircraft carriers accompanied by guided missile destroyers and various aircraft and helicopters. The USS Abraham Lincoln, USS Gerald R. Ford. The Lincoln.
Gerald Ford was like a moron. Gerald Ford is the guy they got to replace Nixon. And he was like, I mean, when I saw him as a kid, I'm like, that guy's like a stone. He's not even alive. He had no personality. I mean, he was just like really dumb and really, I mean, he was, I don't know if he was having dementia, but he was just bad. But he's got a ship named after him.
It's not publicly broadcast its location for more than a week, but it's believed to be operating somewhere near Oman. Gerald R. Ford spotted off the Greek island of Crete on Monday. And I could go on. Somewhere, Lindsey Graham just got a chill down his spine, and that special little feeling just at the list of that military buildup. Tucker, you're having a different feeling. So am I. I don't get it. I got to be honest. I don't get it. Because we were just told by the president in July, I covered it at length, you didn't want him to go into Iran with those bombs in July. We did. I was fine with it. I was like,
I was fine. Yeah, I'm fine with it. Whatever. Let's fuck Iran over again. Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, fine. Let's take out the military facility or the nuclear facility. And then when they said they destroyed it,
obliterated.
I didn't know. I saw the conflicting reporting on whether we did or we didn't, but the president certainly said we did. And now here we are 6 months later saying we have to go back in to stop the nuclear program. The one that we just allegedly bombed.
Okay, no, but fucking just why are you even talking about this like it's a real thing?
Bombed and destroyed a few months ago.
Right.
I watched a debate on Piers Morgan today with two pro-Israel folks and two anti. And the pro-Israel woman was saying, yeah, Israel benefits. This is definitely good for Israel. Of course we want this.
Right.
I accept that. I've heard you say on your show, great, no problem. Yeah. But what do we get out of it? Like, that's fine for them to want it and advocate. What do we get out of it? Why is President Trump considering this?
I don't think the president wants to do it. I think he's been really clear about that. I spoke to him the other day. He didn't say anything to me that he doesn't say in public all the time.
He's so transparent.
Trump is amazingly transparent.
He's just amazingly transparent.
In that way, I've spoken to him a lot. I speak to him regularly a lot. And he never says anything that he wouldn't say in the middle of a speech.
Oh, no.
There's no secret agenda that I've detected. And he said, I don't want to do this. I want a diplomatic solution. I don't want to go to war.
Okay, so just so my wife said the guy who was negotiating between Trump and Iran said Iran came out and said, yeah, we're definitely not going to get nuclear weapons. Like they said, they've been saying that for years. Like it's not, that's just, so that thing is just, it's not true. Everyone knows it's not true. Trump's a lying piece of shit, right?
Against going to war, I don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. That's what he says in public and in private, on the phone and in person and on stage. And so I believe it. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. It doesn't have the means to get a nuclear weapon. If it had a nuclear weapon to the United States, Mark Levin said 3 days ago in his podcast, they've got nuclear-tipped ICBMs. That's a lie. He should be removed from his job for saying that because it's untrue, and he knows it's untrue. This is not about protecting the United States.
Among many other reasons.
Well, that's right, but this is incredibly high stakes. I mean, I could go on for an hour about what could go wrong in this war if it takes...
Okay, what's gone wrong so far now? They've bombed a military base, a U.S. military base in Iraq. Iran has. They're closing the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the energy to the world goes out of. And so they're cutting off the energy that's going through the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know if America can... I mean, they would have to send in ground troops to take that over. And Iran's got a massive military, like millions of soldiers and whatever else they have, right? And I don't know how much there's troops are on those boats. And then again, that becomes a ground war. But I don't think they could just bomb the shit out of the Strait of Hormuz and allow it to be open, right? Like, I don't know what it is. It's like it's like the Panama Canal. And so if you bomb the shit out of it, the ships can't get through anyway. And it may take years to fix it. So, like, I don't think it's a solution. I don't know that much about it, right? I think Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz, which they have, and that's going to fuck energy and drive everything up price-wise, massive inflation globally. And then other countries are going to be pissed off at America because they're already pissed off at Israel. And so, this was an unnecessary war that the world isn't supporting. He didn't get support from anybody else in the world. This is an Israel-American act, and the UN, I don't know how these people start condemning it. I don't know what they're going to do. But, they will start condemning it when their people start fucking being pissed off that, they don't have energy. China gets so much energy from which we'll cover with coming up. They get, this is a whole thing with that other woman that I got on with Tucker Carlson. And so it's already going to have negative effects. Like, we don't know how these things are going to affect people in 6 months, what places of the world it'll affect them, and what, actions will be taken, right? Like, this could be easily considered a war crime. It can be condemned by the UN when it goes south, right? And then the whole thing, like, Trump will be like Trump against the world, right? Because you know how he still feels about criticism and people putting limits on him. Trump doesn't like to have limits put on him about people who are not his handler. He'll let Israel do it. He'll let Netanyahu do it. But this is the
place. I think it's likely to take place, but it's not assured. The president decides, and he has not made that decision. But all things being equal, it will happen. And you could see massive disruption to the U.S. economy. You could see a lot of Americans die. There are tens of thousands in the region, both military and non-military. And you could see some of our closest allies in the world, the Gulf states, who supply the energy for civilization around the world, you could see them disabled by this. And then you could see massive refugee crises around the world.
Okay, so I don't know if he gets to it here. Well, let's go a little bit farther.
Because the plan is to take out the leadership of Iran, but there's no plan after that. So it would be an open wound, 92 million people on a huge landmass, and that would continue the invasion of Europe by immigrants. A lot of them would wind up in the Gulf states.
Let's see if it's...
You would never do that. No, this is about sweeping away any opposition to Israel's regional hegemony. Israel believed...
Okay, so what he said, I don't need to... He said in his other video, and I don't know if I covered it already, what he said was that Trump might do this not because he wants to. He'll do it because Israel... Let me see if he says it here, because I want to... if he doesn't, I can find the other thing. I'm not going to do that, though. Okay, so if he doesn't say it here, he says something that's interesting about India here, which also hangs this guy in his credibility. And I'll get to that in a moment when I show you either he doubles down on what I saw in another video. But here it talks about how Israel's wanting it's America out of the region and they want to pivot to India, which is, obviously what's happening.
Primarily Qatar, because they're disobedient. They don't follow Israel's lead on a lot of different things. And this war, and of course the United States, because the United States is constantly telling Israel, you can do this, you can't do that. Trump's like, no, you can't take over the entire West Bank and kick all the Christians out or whatever. The United States is a constraint on Israel. So they want the U.S. out of the region. Why wouldn't they? And they're, of course, pivoting to India. Israel has decided it needs a superpower to exist. It's only 9 million people. It's a really small country. So they have to be in alliance with a larger nuclear-armed power. They have to, or they won't exist. And they've picked India. Prime Minister Modi was in the Knesset yesterday and meeting with Netanyahu yesterday. And that is the plan. Israel will pivot from the United States to India. And I don't think anyone's even pretending that's not happening because support for Israel in the United States is going down. So this is the last opportunity for Israel to use the U.S. military.
So this is something I've been saying for, since, I don't know, Trump got elected, that this would be the last opportunity because when I saw that this is for months, that Israel had to do it now. If they were going to go after the promised land, it was now. Because, the next election cycle, Israel will be an issue. Like, Israel is, negativity towards Israel will be an issue that these candidates are going to have to address, right? And now Tucker Carlson's coming around to this. But he won't say, like I said in my last video, that Trump's a piece of shit, right? Because Trump could bail on Israel right now, and they could just dismiss Israel, and Israel, they could cut ties with them. I don't know why the fuck India would, what Israel has to offer India, right? Like, I don't think I don't think Modi was Epstein, right? Like, fucking,
To sweep away one of the few remaining speed bumps on the way to controlling the entire Middle East and having hegemony. And what does that mean? Well, Israel would like to expand its borders through the Levant into Syria. They're already taking land there, and into Lebanon, same thing. And
okay, so I've talked about this quite a bit, right? The Promised Land, way before Tucker Carlson, but Tucker Carlson's leaving out the most important part, that Trump's the last refuge and last piece of shit that'll allow Israel to do that and fuck over America, because we have interests there. So if they want America to be kicked out of the Middle East, and then they're going to try to partner up with India somehow and control that region, and I don't know how that would work. India and China are at odds. I mean, they've always been enemies, and I don't know, like they're part of the BRICS thing. Who knows, right? But let me see if he says it here, and if not, I'll find it in the other spot. So he goes on to say, and Megyn Kelly agrees with him. Well, Megyn Kelly says that Trump says, America always wins and we'll always win. But no one in the administration wants this war. None of his allies. I mean, the neocons maybe to whatever extent. They're not really part of Trump's world. I mean, some of them are. But, they all know this is going to end disastrously, right? So they're saying that. And this is what Tucker Carlson said about 3 or 4 days before that. This is the first time he said that Israel has no choice. This is the window's closing.
why would he even be considering a war with Iran? Well, one way to think about it is the United States may not have a choice about whether or not this war starts. Because, of course, the government of Benjamin Netanyahu could always act unilaterally, preemptively against Iran and just do it. Just strike Iran. What would happen then? Well, most likely the Iranians would strike Israel and then potentially strike American assets in the Gulf and then potentially strike energy facilities in the Gulf. And the United States would be, by definition, drawn in.
Okay. You just, this earlier thing I was talking about where Tucker Carlson did a great job of saying Israel doesn't do anything for America. And without American support, Israel will collapse. Now, India isn't going to give them the kind of support America does. India doesn't have the military, doesn't have any of these things. And India doesn't believe in the Promised Land. India doesn't believe in the Old Testament of the Bible, right? They don't believe in any of these things. So whatever relationship there, it has to be mutually beneficial. And if they're not going to get the kind of support they've gotten from owning politicians, like I said, they don't have, Epstein and these things, all that kind of stuff to hang, all that kind of stuff. Where there's an Epstein joke in the Saturday Night Live thing, which is actually, a fairly good joke. I mean, certainly a good joke for Saturday Night Live, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So Trump could just say, fuck you to Israel right now. The support for Israel is waning, and he could say, fuck you. And he could say to Iran, if Israel strikes you, we have nothing to do with it. Don't bring us in because we'll obliterate you. But, if Israel's going to do it, fight against them. Like, just make it a war between you and Israel, and we'll stay out. Like, you could say that to Iran right now. And he could, and they were ready to make a deal anyway. He said, well, we'll make a private deal about your nuclear weapons, but you and Israel, if Israel strikes you, that's on them. And he said to Netanyahu, if you strike, we're going to cut you off. You're fucking done. We're going to disavow you. Fuck you. You can say fuck you. Trump's native language is fuck you. But he can't say it to Netanyahu, the little fucking pipsqueak, that little fucking country. So Tucker Carlson should say that. And so should Megyn Kelly. Because they know. Like, they know all these other details, things I don't know about. They're talking to these people. They know all this and that and whatever. But they still, like, he talks about how much he talks to Trump. Yeah, so what? You cut it off. Like, fucking, tell the fucking truth about the guy. And it would be a lot more from you. And, if you guys had done this years ago, it wouldn't be what it is now. But, this going outing Israel and things like this. But you guys, waited too long to be truthers. I mean, they used to shit on the truth community, and they're still doing it. They won't tell the truth about Charlie Kirk, and they won't tell the truth about Netanyahu's relationship with Trump and what a puppet Trump is. And so, like, that's the issue, right? And again, even if you don't stop anything, you owe your audience that, right? Because you got things going on up until a point, and then you don't, then you're like, you don't tell them the truth, right? You bring them close to the truth, and then you like leave parts out or you lie about something. And Trump is the problem here. Trump getting worked and played and just being a piece of shit. And again, like I said in the beginning, this is, I can say this is God's will. And so, you need a moron to do God's will in this case, right? You need a piece of shit like Trump, but because no sane person would do what's happening here. No one would do this and set about a course in motion that's going to bring down the civilization that we're 100% dependent on. So you need a piece of shit. So, I guess you could say that about Trump, but that's not what they're saying. They're pretending he's a good guy and he's a fucking, he's a noble man and he's just stuck in a fucking bad situation. So fuck these guys, right? Okay, so as bad as Tucker Carlson sucks on this, at least he's blaming or saying this is an Israeli war, and to some extent, Megyn Kelly's saying the same thing. The rest of these guys, it's so obvious that they're blaming this all on Trump. Like, this is Trump's war, right? When clearly he's a puppet. Like, they won't say it because they don't want to talk about Israel because they're controlled media, right? And this fucking guy...
You want to know how Donald Trump's lying? His freaking lips are moving.
Boom! Wow. Kabam.
He is so full of shit. I'm the president of peace. I'm going to stop all these wars. I'm going to get us out of the endless wars. He always says that about other people, about himself. And he said that Barack Obama
Wait, what happened there, bro?
was going to start a war with Iran. He tweeted that and then said it publicly, and he's doing the exact same thing because of his flagging poll numbers. He's so full of shit. You can't believe anything this...
So you're saying it's the flagging poll numbers? You think the poll numbers are why he's doing this fucking war? Like, how retarded are you? Like, you're the dumbest motherfucker out there. You think this is going to help his poll numbers? I mean, you could say it's about Epstein. Like, that's partly it. Like, as a distraction from Epstein, because that's, but his poll numbers have nothing to do with it. His poll numbers are getting fucking better because of this war. There's lots of Republican MAGA people that were against these wars. And their kids are in the military, and they don't want them anywhere near this. And, the whole thing's going south on Israel. And you can't fucking say anything about Israel?
Guy says, this guy could be the end of us. You want to know how Donald...
Like, that's just, like, I mean, you're the fucking dumbest motherfucker on the internet. With, any substantial audience. Holy shit. I mean, there's a lot of dumb guys who don't have an audience, but this guy, is supposed to be... I mean, you could say the official story, but if you're going to come up with something other than the official story, you should have something that's just, like, at least partially true. You could say it's Epstein. If you don't want to say it's Israel, say it's Epstein. But Jesus Christ, bro. Okay, so this is Catherine Austin Fitts. She was I think a Reagan person, or maybe not Reagan, probably who knows, George W. Bush. She's in charge of the Treasury. She has something to do with finance. So she's a banker, a finance person. And this is back when Alex Jones used to have quality guests. She has a newsletter. I told my wife about her, I think some time ago, or sent something. And my wife listens to her fairly regularly. She's one of the better people out there that's mainstream, has a mainstream connection. And she explains this to Tucker Carlson in terms of the economic reasons.
Back to 9/11. And when Wesley Clark said we're gonna invade 7 countries in 5 years, what you were talking about were the countries where
I just showed you that video the other day, so I thought I would, this was interesting.
Central banks were not on board to do programmable money, and their governance structures were not on board with essentially, because of Epstein, I'll call it the Rockefeller.
So Libya, remember gold dinar? Gaddafi was selling oil in gold dinar. Gaddafi, the UN had these Millennium Development Goals. And I knew a lot about them because of my research into the UN, because I was, trying to get Saj Marg away from them, as an NGO, all that stuff, not as a non-governmental. I've talked about this extensively. And I was really upset by the Libyan thing. It affected me more than other, where there was clear just lying to go into that war by Obama and them. And, it was just wrong. And he was on course on the path to achieve all the Millennium Development Goals. I don't know if any of the there's 6 Millennium Development Goals, and they were like income per capita for each person, right? And Gaddafi's was $10,000, the highest in Africa. 10,000, which is good for these other countries. Education of children, his was like 90 percentile. Getting educated, things like that. Treatment of women, private and public partnerships. He was bringing in foreign companies to do business, things like this, right? So there's 6 development goals that these so-called developing countries, these third world countries, were given. And Gaddafi took his country from the poorest country in Africa to the richest. And so the UN should have been like, wow, you're doing great, because he was. But instead of doing that, they decided to, destroy him and kill him, and eventually get him sodomized by a sword by ISIS that Obama sent in there to take care of him, right? And it was really bad. And so this is what she's talking about. He was trying to sell oil for a gold dinar, which would collapse the petrodollar. So that's why they took him out, right? No other reason.
Rothschild model, there was an effort to say, okay, we're going to basically assert control of the central banks in those countries. That's my interpretation. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much tension around Iran is because Iran right now is the big leakage in the system.
How?
So,
Wait, it's not about their nukes?
No. So, well, Iran's central bank counts. One of the reasons it counts is because their oil and energy is very important, including for China.
Yeah.
And that's very important in the BRICS system. What the BRICS system is trying to do is to create independent payment systems. But if you're going to come out with programmable money, with digital IDs that are interoperable globally, and programmable money that controls in each jurisdiction centrally, you can't afford leakage. And so you've got way too much leakage in the system to proceed with what they're trying to do. And Iran is, and the BRIC nations are a sticking point. And certainly Iran's oil, feeding China gives China greater independence.
So you think that one of the motives behind toppling all these governments was the creation of the control grid we're talking about now?
Right. So if you...
Yeah, the people, I think most of us knew this in terms of the central banks, right? Get them on the Rothschild, Rockefeller central banks, which he's talking about here, right? I think most of us knew this. And there's an economic interest here. But I don't think, this is 100% Israel. Like fucking their opportunity right now to take over that region. I mean, the central banks are going to be part of that, but whatever it is. And, this is it. Like, if they don't do it, they have nothing to lose. Because when America bails on Israel, which is going to happen in the next election cycle, where the sentiment towards Israel, especially amongst younger people, is turning, right? And so, and especially after this war with Iran and all these things, and it'll come about. And so, and they know that it's not a sustainable relationship because of all the things that we've seen. So this is their one opportunity, like I've been saying for a long time, with a superpower to take over that region. And if they miss this opportunity, they're fucked. Like, what are they going to do? Everybody hates them there, right? Like, they have to go for it. Like, it's just survival of they're such a parasite, and the survival of their unsustainable country is everything. And, without this next move, they're doomed. And so, even if it's like buying a lottery ticket and they're going to fuck up the whole world, the rest of the goy, all the goy, they're going to destroy everything. It's worth it to them to take that shot at being a superpower in the middle of they'd be the only superpower in that oil-rich, resource-rich area. Like, it's just not oil, but there's lots of precious metals and things out there. So it'd be a good area to be a superpower. They would have they'd have a big economy and all the military things and, all the stuff they've gotten. So they've got to ride their host. The parasite has to ride its host through the Iran war, and then jump off of it, right? But the financial considerations are certainly a part of this. Like I was saying about Don Lemons, there's lots of reasons. There's Epstein, right? There's fucking, there's all the things that whatever reasons that are coming together, but none of these are about his failing poll numbers. Like that means nothing to him because it's going to get worse. This is an unpopular war that's just going to go south when you start paying extra money and they start telling you on MSNBC and CNN that your prices have gone up because of this war, because they closed the Strait of Hormuz, and then they start getting bogged down there, and there's no people aren't all psyched about it. Americans aren't parading in the streets. Americans aren't psyched about this, right? And so Saturday Night Live has just some of the stuff that they didn't age well. It's not funny now, but it was funny at the time. But the program itself has gotten worse and worse because they didn't make fun of Joe Biden in any real way till the end, when the guy was just a walking gaffe. But aside from that, the jokes just suck. There's too much pedo stuff in the show. I mean, there should be none, right? It's not funny. And it's just weird, and the people they've had on have gotten suckier and suckier over the years. But one of the fall-offs is they're impressionist, right? The people used to do the impressions were pretty good and pretty funny. But when they rolled out Alec Baldwin, who just did an impression of himself, because he hates himself, and him and Trump are very similar. And then, ever since then, they have people on the show that can do impressions, but they never use them in the right, capacity. And this guy sucks. So many people can do a Trump impression. He's very, he's got a very idiosyncratic way of talking. Lots of people do his impression. This guy sucks. And it starts off a little bit like Trump. By the end, it's like he's like Bill Clinton. And he looks like Bill Clinton.
Hi. Good evening and happy World War III to all who celebrate.
So that's not funny, right? Just stupid.
Iran has been 2 weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon for the last 15 years or something.
No, 50. So that's kind of a shot at Israel, but not really. You have to know. It's a subtle joke. They won't come out and say Israel did it, right? Because this is Netanyahu's bullshit, and they don't mention him here. And they don't make fun of him because he should be. This is, when America went to do the Iraq war and England didn't want any part of it, and then there were leaked documents. I forget what the name of the movie is. My wife and I watched it on our way to India. It stars Keira Knightley as a intelligence analyst, low-level intelligence analyst. And there's documentation that, America was sort of bullying and blackmailing England or pressuring them into going to war. And she leaked the documents. It's a whole thing. Okay, it's a good movie, whatever it's called. But and don't tell me, don't care. You can look it up if you want. But England then started to call Tony Blair Bush's poodle, right? Like his lapdog. And there was that time where, Blair was talking to Bush, and there was an open mic, and there's a whole thing, and just Blair looked like a complete little puppy dog. And so, these other countries know when someone's a puppet, right? I mean, they cover it more than we would cover it here. And, the way that the media, at least. And they all know that Trump is Putin's puppet. I mean, Netanyahu's puppet. But, the liberal media had no problem saying that Trump was Putin's puppet, but there's no reason for him to be Putin's puppet. Putin doesn't have anything on him, right? But they said he did. But we know what Netanyahu has on him, and that's fucking Epstein, right? Which they're going to say up here. So he later sounds like Jimmy Carter. I mean, not Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton. But here he sounds like Owen Wilson and looks like Owen Wilson.
What is it good for? Distracting from the Epstein files.
Yeah, but not, they don't bring in Netanyahu and Mossad and the rest of it, right? Because they're weak, like they suck. All right, so that's Saturday Night Live. One more thing to get to here. Okay, so I opened up Twitter, and this is the first thing I saw.
He also always did have trust with the president, and he would look for the bright side of things. And he was an American patriot, so he would pray for our success once that began. And I just want to say that to offer perspective on how I think he would have felt about this. And that's not to use Charlie as a shield. That is not to say everything just revolves around him, because he's not with us anymore. But I know all of us are feeling the lack of Charlie in a moment like this, because he was a natural leader of the movement.
Well, I think that's also, like, as soon as all of this broke out, you saw that social media immediately went to go find Charlie clips, because he still is, even in death, like the leading voice on a matter like this.
Well, and
The leading voice?
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and it makes me upset, though, because for these people that didn't actually know Charlie, like Blake, you said it, in private, he would be not happy with the situation. And he would express his thoughts. You'd oftentimes see him talk about it on the show. But then as soon as this would happen, he would have trust in the president. He would try to calm people down. And so it's really irritating for me to see so many people on social media have the opposite reaction, to use his voice to actually cause chaos, to actually cause fear of the situation, to actually cause...
All right, so they said that Charlie Kirk talked Trump down to a certain extent on the first Iran strike. And this was problematic for his relationship with Israel. Like, this is part of why he's dead now. He's starting to turn on Israel. Not that Charlie Kirk was Charlie Shekels, he was a piece of shit. There's one of my viewers made a video, like it's a cartoon kind-ish video, AI-ish, and I'm a character in it, which I showed to my wife. I've known about for like 2 months. I forgot about it, but I knew my wife would like it. She thought it was hysterical. But the person was calling, Charlie Shekels. Sometime I'll pull that up and I'll show a little bit of it here. I just, I'm wiped out by the whole thing. I'm trying to wrap this video up and get it done for tomorrow. It's kind of cold out, but I want to do some work outside. I had a little bit of an episode last night. Not a big deal. It's like, less than, these things that's happening with my case, this tachycardia thing, which, it's more than just that. But anyways, I have some voiceovers I'm going to put on for my my thing there, the fear and anxiety sitting thing and all that. So I got 2 voiceovers I'm going to add at the end of this video that tie into all this stuff that I think are kind of interesting. I want to answer one particular comment that I saw yesterday. So, but this thing with Charlie Kirk, he clearly would have been against it. And if this thing is bad, it's going to go south. Everybody fucking knows it, right? This is a thing where you do something and it's going to go badly. The Trump administration knows it's going to go badly for America. Like, this fucks America. Israel might, they're playing their fucking roulette ball here. Like I said, they have nothing to lose because, they're going into the fucking shitter one way or another. America's bailing on them. They've lost America. I mean, they're fucking courting India and all that shit. All the stuff that they're doing. They know that they don't have much of anything. And so, I mean, I don't know what else these guys said. Maybe I'll watch more of the video. But trying to say that Charlie wouldn't be against this because, anybody who's sane, not that I'm saying Charlie was great, Charlie couldn't, protect himself from his handlers and his wife. Fucking, well, we saw how it ended up for Charlie. But, this is going to end badly, and everybody fucking knows it. And the consequences are going to, what's this going to look like in 10 years? What's this going to look like in 2 years, in 5 years? And so in 10 years, Trump will be dead. And, what's the world going to look like then? And, this is a catalyst, not just because the whispers of the brighter world predicted it's, all the things I read in the last video, but the rest of this. So, anyways, let me get to the voiceovers here. Wrap this one up. Okay, so I got one particular comment I want to cover from like yesterday that I saw popped up on my phone. I had a reaction to it, but I just didn't have time and energy to do it. I want to say one more thing about this thing that we saw with TPUSK, right? Because what they were talking about and what they were doing is, what would Charlie say, right? And this is the problem when you have again, Charlie wasn't a saint and he wasn't a spiritual person. He was a shackled up piece of shit, but he was a leader and he was an inspirational leader to these people, these dumb fucks that followed him. And, when you have somebody like that, and when you have legitimate saints, even more so, as soon as they die, people start speaking for them. He would have done this. I think he would have done this. People get their own personal point of view. Even when they're alive, they do shit like that. Because I saw this with Master Charge, right? So here's an example of this. My first trip to India, there was this Russian girl that's probably a year or two younger than me, right? Someone who would be, possible, relationship. And there's a lot of pressure to get married in the Sajmark system, and I was single and in my 30s, so pretty much came up all the time. And Chargy, I wanted to travel with him. He was going to northern India. And I asked him if I could travel with him. He said, yeah, go ask her. He connected me with this girl. And she had a very high voice and was kind of annoying. She was smart and she was spiritual, but her voice was like, maybe like that kind of thing. Drove me fucking nuts. And we had this, like, what I would consider, we must have had some kind of past life together. And we had like a 3-week relationship that was like a 30-year bad marriage. It was very contentious, right? We didn't, there was no sexual activity. We weren't really like dating or anything, but we traveled together with these older Indians in the first part of the trip, and it was probably it was the best part of that trip. It was very enjoyable. I liked these old Indians, and we got along okay at that point. We got along pretty good. I'm not easily to get along with, especially back then. So this wasn't like all on her. But when we were leaving Calcutta, we went to Varanasi. I'm sorry, we're going from Varanasi in the middle part of India to Calcutta, which is on the western coast. And it was like a 15-hour train ride, and I was just going through it. I was restless and miserable. I was sick. I was sleeping in a dusty room, and back then I was really allergic to dust. I don't love it now, but back then it was, I was just miserable. Like the kind of stuff you go through at a gathering, and it's cleaning. And we needed to buy tickets from Varanasi to Calcutta. And like I kind of pissed a bunch of people off, I think including the master of the system. I was just, I was kind of just restless and angry and, irritable and just whatever. And so like, it wasn't like I was, I was kind of persona non grata kind of thing. And I was supposed to get a ticket, and she said, well, I'll arrange for your ticket, this Russian girl. And she just didn't fucking do it. Like she did it, like she just, and it wasn't like I was mean to her about it. I said, look, I'll do it myself if you want. Like she actually volunteered it. Because I was asking her, who do I talk to get the ticket? And she said, well, I'll do it. And I said, no, I'll do it. And she said, we had been arguing, so I was like, I didn't want her to do something for me when there was some tension between us. And she goes, no, I'll take care of it. I said, sure, because I'll do it. This is no problem. Just tell me who I go talk to. She goes, no, I'll do it. She was really insistent about it. And she decided not to buy the ticket. So we showed up at the train station, and I ended up getting food poisoning there. And I was really sick for like the whole rest of the trip. Like I wasn't digesting water. It was like running through me. And when we got there, like I was kind of bummed. And I told a bunch of people, like, she just didn't buy me the fucking ticket. And, when they heard the story, they're like, that was completely fucked, right? Because, if you're left alone in India, you're going to die. Like, especially, the way I was feeling at that time, right? And so, that was whatever it was. So we get there, and water's like running right through me, and I'm worried that I'm going to dehydrate. I don't like go to the doctors, and I wasn't that psyched about going to Indian doctors. And, I was just miserable anyway. I wasn't like wanting to interact with anybody. And we were at this venue in Calcutta, and this dude comes up to me and says, I could use a girl's name because her name's Svetlana, right? And he comes up and goes, Master doesn't like your relationship with Svetlana. Implying that it was inappropriate relationship, some kind of whatever. And, and you should knock it off. Like he's a guy's just random fucking guy. Like, and there's a few times I've wanted to slap people, like literally. And I was kind of weakened anyway, but just, I couldn't even express how much that was like not the case. Like she completely screwed me on the tickets, and we were just always arguing, and she was always, basically mad at me for being American, and just having a bad, being American like punky attitude or whatever. But this guy just came up and said this thing, and I don't know what charge he did or didn't say, but it was none of his fucking business, and whatever it was weird. But like people just make shit like that. That's a small thing, right? There's bigger things like joining the UN and some of these other things. And it's going to come up. So one of the comments I'm going to talk about. Well, let me go to that comment here. So one of the persons wrote this, and they said the timestamp the video. Master Chargy went, and the person spelled it right, which is cool. It's Chariji. G is what they say. Like Chargy called me Romano G one time, I think. Master Chargy, just a joke. Master Chargy went to the Wailing Wall and said, "Yeah, there's no spiritual energy there. Every time I hear this story, it makes me laugh. A spiritual leader, tidily and accurately summing it all up. Basically, yeah, it's all bullshit." Well, like he wouldn't know. Like he was a schooled Christian in the Christian tradition in India. He went to a Catholic Christian school, and he read the Bible, and he was St. Paul in a previous life. But I don't know how much he knew about Israel and these things. But there was a lot of pressure on him. Like for him, he was always a good traveler. He traveled 200 days a year. He was fluent in many different languages, and he liked these other cultures. He liked seeing people and going to these places. But the goal was always to meet people that were willing to do the Sajmark system. And some countries are just, he would know going into the country, he could feel it. And there just wasn't many people that were capable and wanting to do the system. And Israel was one of them. And there were a lot of people pushing him to go to Israel, and I think it was because of these guys were business guys, and they had financial relationships. And this is, towards the end of his life there, and he was not able to travel as much. It was very disappointing that these guys, pushed him to go to Israel, right? Like some of these guys, he trusted some people to go and say, like, look, this is a good area where we could, if you go there, maybe we can expand the mission there, and people can do the practice. And he saw that wasn't the case in Israel. There maybe were a few people doing the meditation there, and the guy who was like, the guy who was my preceptor, started my preceptorship, started my, when I was introduced to the city, was a Jewish hippie named Fred, and Fred was, Fred's one of my people, like he's one of like my favorite people, but that's in America, but in Israel there was nothing. And, they wanted him to go to these places, and he didn't find any spiritual energy there at all. Of course not, with the humping of the wall and all those things. But this happens when there is a movement, no matter what it is, and then people all try to put their own agenda on it. They want to take advantage of the movement, and, it's painful. Like, it's for anybody who has one of these movements, and they have a specific goal and specific instructions from God if they're a spiritual person. And then it's just all this pressure from people to do stupid shit. So there are a bunch of comments about people talking about how this person wrote, "The Whispers prediction is crazy." Wow, Paul kept telling us about this, which is true. There's another one here. So I didn't get all of these in here, but there was some I wanted to respond to. "I owe you an apology from 5 years ago. You called the dude from the Q thing to the new wars to jumpstart World War. You called it. I'm sorry, I doubted it." Nobody owes me an apology. Like I don't believe in that. People are, whatever. I mean, I don't hold grudges, and this isn't about that. I was waiting all day for your post. You called it. Well, I really didn't call it. Like I just read what the Whisper said. Like I didn't have any idea. And someone wrote, and so, yeah, let me just say something about those things, and I think the rest are not about that. I was convinced of Sajmark efficacy when I started so many years ago. Like, I had these profound spiritual experiences. And I was dabbling in some, like, New Age stuff, and I was in therapy, and, I had some, spiritual tendencies. But I never thought about my heart. Like, I wasn't, like, I felt love, and I was, sometimes affectionate. But mostly I was just kind of an asshole and just, kind of punky, and I knew I had to change. There was some kind of shit going on, whatever. Like I was frustrated with like who I was and where my life was going. These things. 28 years old, 29 years old, and I had this profound like Paul getting knocked off the horse at Damascus, but more subtle than that. Deep, profound experience of God. Like it was undeniable. And, I've been lucky because of that. Because lots of people start the Sajmark system and they have a nice, subtle, experience, but it's not something that's, just irrefutable proof. And then I've had irrefutable proof over and over again of the efficacy of the system. And I really believe in these whispers of the brighter world messages because I experienced them. Like the dodgy truther, he thinks they're a scam or whatever. I don't know the word he uses. This guy who doesn't like Kamlish. And so there are a lot of people that rejected the whispers messages. But almost all of them are ignoring the prophecies. And, I don't know I should check Heartfulness's YouTube channel. So I just looked at that, and I don't know if there's anything on their Facebook or any of these things. I'm not going to go look at all those. They've blocked me, and I blocked them, I think. I don't know. So, but I don't, I just don't want to put the effort in. But they're not mentioning it at all, right? They're not mentioning the whispers of the brighter one message at all, which seems odd to me. And, very few people talked about the prophecies. And I'm like, these prophecies, like, they were 20 years ago. It talked about this thing. And the world changing in a way that's kind of fucked. And you can read all the prophecies there's a video that's linked in every video of mine in the description box. There's a Whispers of the Brighter World prophecies, and I've read all of them, right? And so you'll get a sense of them. And there's many more I'm going to read upcoming. I get a day just to do that. For years it was like, well, that's in 20 years, that's in 15 years, that's in 10 years, that's in 5 years. And a couple of years ago, I'm like, that's in like a couple of years. I'm like, holy shit, this is like, and then this summer, I'm like, well, this winter, this event's supposed to happen. And, I don't know whether it's going to happen or not. I have no idea. I'm just reading what it said. But I am aware of it, and I believe in this book, and I believe in the system. There's always things that can change, but it didn't sound like this was going to be one of them. And so there it is, right? But like I didn't do anything. I just believed in something that I, was given plenty of evidence was a valid source. And, and this has been predicted for a while. Of course, in this video, I've already read in the beginning of the video, I read the My Vision chapter. And, it validates the system. And, I mean, for people who see that it validates the system, as things start to unfold, because it's going to be validated more and more. It's not just what happened Saturday. It's what's going to happen from this war. And as these things that he describes in the Whispers prophecies start to unfold, not that this is a prophetic system. The Whispers prophecies are, there's 20,000 of these messages, and about 5% of them are prophetic, or they talk about truther stuff. I would say about 5 to 10% validate the truth system. And my, doing truther stuff on this channel came from my investigating some of the Whispers messages. Like I believed in them, but I wanted to prove it for myself, and I, was interested. And so there were things that were said that I looked into, and they either had happened already because some of the Whispers were older, or there was material validation of what was being said. And so there are a lot of things in the Whispers of the Brighter World messages that are, truther stuff. And so anyways, so there's that. So where am I? Here is it. I'm sorry that you may not have above average intellect, but some of us do. This video makes you look like make you look as dumb as Newscomb. The video is why is Candace just as bad as Erica? Gavin Newsom sells himself as a dumb fuck. That's exactly what people with an above average intellect, that's exactly the kind of comment they leave. I mean, you might be, you might have 101 IQ. Like, you might be 1% above the average. But, but anyways, here's a comment I really wanted to read, though. Buy a King James Bible. This is, guess who considers Jesus a failed Messiah? Buy a King James Bible and read it. Praying for God's help. It's all in there. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and be saved. Don't get sucked into the anti-Semitism. The Jews rejected Jesus, a Jew, but they are still God's people and will one day turn to him. This is somebody who just happened on my channel and doesn't belong here because, if you're going to ride and die with the Bible and this is what you're going to believe, and it's all you can do, then I'm not here to tell you, you're full of shit because, you're not my people. This isn't who the videos are made for. People who believe in the Bible and believe in Christianity and they're incapable of seeing beyond it. That's fine, right? But there's lots of people who they know it isn't like the Word of God. It's not the Word of God. The Bible's not the Word of God. There's some good things in there. But you would have to compare it to other things, and you'd have to embark on your own spiritual journey, and then you would see there's a lot of bullshit in there. Not just the circumcision and weird shit, but just a lot of things. And, this idea that there's chosen people, it's a God that they said, this is what God said. It's the same thing I was saying about Charlie Kirk. You can't say, I speak for God. Oh, God told me. Yeah, God told me to do that, right? That's what happened. If you ever watch Ricky Gervais's invention on lying, the invention of lying, this is the exact same bullshit, right, that they did, that he does in the movie. He's the first person to ever lie. And he starts his own religion, and he basically starts saying, this is what God said, and this, that, and nobody doubts him because no one's ever lied before, right? So it's kind of a brilliant movie in that way. It's a great concept. But in that, this whole thing, what's happened, everyone can kind of see that, most people can see that this is going to lead to bad shit. And, if the Jews is God's chosen people, then this is what's going to happen. Like the greater Israel is going to become theirs, right? The whole area of the Middle East is going to be controlled by 10 million people. Like Iran has whatever Tucker Carlson said, 90 million people. It's going to be a square mile is bigger than Iran. It's got all these other people that hate Jewish people, that hate Israel, and that live there now. And, who's going to, there's just no way that could happen, right? They're not going to be able to they control the assets in those lands. They can subject, they can make those people, subjectify them or make them subjects, whatever the word is for that. They can make them subjects, but they can't, that's all they can do, right? So, anyways, it's just right there. Like, if they are the chosen people, then this will go their way, right? But if they're not the chosen people, this will be the end of them because this is, it's going to be one. It's like one or the other, right? They're going for it. They're going for the big kahuna. And, we'll see how it all plays out. Like, talk to me in 10 years, right? So anyways. Okay, so I have two voiceovers, one from today and one from yesterday, I believe. I want to add to this. I think they'll be helpful. I've gone through it. Like I'm just wiped out. This whole heart thing that I have, this, the rapid heartbeat and all that stuff. And it's not just that. There's other things that are going on with it. And then doing the cleaning playlist and then all this stuff and the Whispers Prophecies is like, it's like I need a vacation because I'm just spent. I feel, I'm sleeping great. I'm sleeping through, I'm not waking up. I haven't slept through in years. I wake up maybe one time or sometimes none. And I sleep just through 8 hours or whatever. So it's not a matter of lack of sleep, but it's been for me, just, like this is a culmination of something that I've had feelings about for 10, 20 years. And it's all the stuff to do with Whispers and my truther work and all the things and all these videos. And, now it's, the change is upon us. Like there's been a shift. Something shifted, something changed. And, I'm feeling it. Anyways, so here are the two voiceovers. Okay, so I did the final sitting. I took the final sitting. I meditated and received the final meditation. I think I talked about giving it, and I'm not sure if I did in the last audio. Today's Saturday, February 28th. Big things have happened. So first of all, the sitting was amazing to give. When you give these sittings, there's some books and training for, how to give a basic sitting. And there was a training done by Master Chargy. And then there was, various books and things and comments and, talking about it and talking to people about it, talking to preceptors. But something like this gathering where it's targeting a specific type of condition, whatever you want to call fear, you don't want to look for fear, right? So it's something that you're cleaning without like searching for a specific thing. Like the ideas that, whatever's there, whatever fear is there, whatever panic, whatever, is blocking somebody's spiritual evolution, whatever's blocking their connection to divinity is being removed. And so there are a couple ways that was done. And the other piece was, what do you put in its place? There's these suggestions are supposed to be given, spiritual suggestions to replace, of course, transmission replaces anything that's cleaned out. Like the transmission, God's divine energy replaces the space that was occupied by the grossness. Like something is removed and something's got to take its place. And so it's always transmission, but also suggestions are given, helpful suggestions. You read the abhyasa, you read the situation, things that you think might help the other, the person, character qualities, or, whatever it might be. And of course, when fear is removed, you want faith is the number one thing, right? You want, courage and faith, and all these things are, it's a belief that everything's okay. A belief that there's a plan, and no matter what's happening, it's a part of that plan. Because fear comes in when you think something's wrong, you think something's happening when it shouldn't be. You think that there's something that's completely something you don't have the strength to endure, something that overwhelms you, something that is, that's going to make you sort of crumble, and then you develop a fear of this thing happening, right? Something that's beyond your ability to endure, right? So, like when my kids were young, the thought of one of them dying was like, that was it. Like that was the thing that I just couldn't, I was like, I can't handle that. Please don't give me that, right? Whatever. It's things that people have to endure, and that was something I just wasn't willing to let happen. And I put a lot of energy into, the consciousness so that wouldn't happen, right? You can do things to sort of block something from happening, or, by keeping your thought forced on it. But of course, later on, when there was chaos and I was run down and overwhelmed, and, my daughter committed suicide, and, it was, I don't want to say it was more bearable, but the circumstances that had happened over the years, my daughter's, my not being able to see a future for her because she just didn't seem like she could hold a job or complete anything. I didn't see her being able to raise kids. I mean, without some changes. We all go through rough periods where we make bad decisions. I had my real punky era, really just a total piece of shit, where I was like just no redeeming qualities and really no future and just whatever. Angry and, like incompetent, overwhelmed. And, but I was able to adapt and change and rise up to it. And the Sajmark system helped. And for my daughter, Anna, it was, she did the meditation for about a month. At least she went to group meditation. She really didn't do like personal practice. And she was young too. She was 16 years old. So it wasn't like, she was getting to start young. I mean, the Kamlesh had relaxed the rules from 18 down to 15, the minimum age. And she, she did it for a little bit, but it didn't stick. And so that was that. But in all that, it became more and more obvious that she, she needed to change drastically to be able to have a normal life, to have a happy, healthy, and productive life. And she just wasn't able to do that. So, but as a younger kid, when she was younger, it would have been really hard for me to take. And, I mean, my family had fallen apart by that time, and I was so, I'd went through the ringer that I was able to endure that. But when the kids were young, that was like something that I just couldn't imagine. And so it's these kind of things that we are scared of, things that could happen, things out of our control, things that, are beyond our capacity to bear the pain. And you develop fears and phobias and things of those things, and, things from past lives or whatever. Maybe you drown in a past life, or you fell off a cliff and, you come in, you've developed a fear of falling or something, of heights and whatever it may be. So in all that, there has to be the cleaning of the fear and then replacing it with something. And the fourth sitting, part of this thing is praying that the ideas come to you, like how to do a playlist. It's a new thing, and part of it is being able to have ideas come to you, and the other part is allowing divinity to do the work that you can't do, like allow God to come through and the divine master and complete the work and do the work, which is how the sittings work in general. That you're inviting God in to do the work that is beyond your ability to see or read or whatever it is. Right, the work is perfect when God is involved and divinity is orchestrating the work. So the fourth sitting really came together. I was very pleased with it. It was very blissful. It was deep cleaning, very subtle, going to a deep place. And then there was, good transmission, and I thought good, suggestions and things that were there to replace what was removed. And then Friday night, I was going to take the sitting before the 9 p.m. We have the universal sitting every Friday night at 9 p.m. that's given by the Divine Master. And I was going to take that sitting at 9 p.m. and I wanted to do the other sitting before that. You usually need, I think, a 4 to 6 hour gap between the sittings. You can't do them. You have to let the sitting set. But I wasn't able to do that. I ran out of time, and so I wasn't able to do the sitting till I went to sleep. And right before I went to sleep, I've been getting these the rapid heartbeat, and this, maybe, I don't know if they would be called panic attacks, and it's also like a rush of adrenaline where I'm wide awake and I'm just really awake, and I get energized, and oftentimes it's happening late at night. And I my heart wasn't racing, but I had the condition that was that had started when I had that rapid heartbeat. And so that happened, and I started to have a little bit of panic, and I knew this prophecy was going to come due. And so I started checking the news because I figured, that Trump might have started to bomb Iran, or maybe there was a solar flare that hit on the other side of the world where it was daylight, any of these things, right? These places where it's already morning, and it's, and I went to bed with a little bit of, I don't want to say, I was just unsettled. And then I took the last sitting. I figured after the last sitting I'd feel better, and I was. I took the sitting. It was really peaceful and blissful, and I fell immediately to sleep. And I woke up. I think it was still dark out. I think my wife woke up early, and I woke up when she got up. It was like 6 a.m. and I woke up and I had like kind of a little bit of a panic attack. And I just the breathing and the heart was okay, but I was just like kind of flipped out. And then I got nauseous and I threw up, and I, but there's not, dry heaved, which is also, this thing is like a migraine. I'm going these physical things that I'm having now. I'm not having the migraines. I'm having this instead, these glitch outs. And after that happened, I meditated and I felt really good, and I got tired and I fell back to sleep, and I woke up and I fell back to sleep again. And I was really sleepy and relaxed. And I woke up and I saw that Trump had started the war with Iran, which, I was anticipating this whole thing. Because of the whispers of the brighter world message, I had to walk away from the voiceover for a little bit, and I ended up having a little bit of a physical episode. But let me get back to this, and I'll talk about that in a second. So, this thing this whispers of the brighter world prophecy, 25 years, quarter century, that was given in 2001 on this date, February 28th. And so, I didn't, in the beginning, think it was going to be to the date. And like I talked about this, and I got a voiceover I did today, which I'm going to put in after this one. And then I'm going to do another voiceover probably tomorrow to wrap this one up. And so, this thing happened. And I had, I want to say I was relieved to hear they were bombing Iran, because, I have a thing with Libya and Iran. There was people who did the meditation from Iran, and they were all great. And some of them specifically I was kind of close to, and wonderful people. And it's not just them and their families, but it's, how much the U.S. has fucked over their country over the years and the whole thing. I talk about that a lot on my other channel. It'd be good for people who are interested, who end up doing this playlist, to, if they do this playlist in a year or so. The video is called The doomsday prophecy has begun as nutless puppet Trump WWE's WW3, World War III, WWE's World War III as Beatty pulls the strings. And that really, I mean, that was what I just came up with on the fly today. But there's, this thing about all of it. And I read a couple of the Whispers messages. You'll hear that in the voiceover in a moment. So I guess, felt a little relieved that it wasn't something that was immediately devastating, like a solar flare or a nuclear bomb going off. That it was something, and I haven't checked the news, but things were escalating today. And also the stars are aligned. There's some kind of energetic thing. And one of my viewers left a comment saying that this was a big day. And my wife just said the same thing. This whole, the planets aligning astrologically and the whole thing, which of course these days always end up being like that. But I was relieved that we have more time to, it was confirmation for me, and yet, which I don't really need, but it's just there, motivational, that, we're going to have to go through some changes. And for me, it's getting the farm ready and, talking more about these things, the need for spirituality here, and the, diving more deeper into the meditative practice. I mean, just all these things, right? Because, things get more intense, and then there's like you have to up your game and all that stuff. So my wife and I had a really good day. We went out to eat, and, we had talked about like preparing for what if there's a solar flare today or whatever, because they talk about that in the Whispers messages, the poles reversing themselves and all that. And so we ended up having a problem with something. And the problem, like there was various ways to solve the problem. Like a problem that was brought to light by the tumultuous time. And we went and asked some guys some questions about it. And, we went shopping for some trees. We had to put up a tree between our path and the newly created path and the bees, as the bees are starting to come out. So that the bees that, we want to put some kind of a shrub bush kind of thing there that would block the bees from when we were walking behind the path, or there would be a barrier, right? And we already have stuff. Once the summer starts growing, there'll be a bunch of foliage there, but we wanted to put something in. We found something. And we had 4 or 5 ways to solve the problem. And what we didn't realize is we had something that would solve the problem, but we had lost it. We later figured out we lost it. And we looked for it everywhere, and we had pretty much given up on it. Then we had, 3 or 4 different ways to still solve the problem, but they were all going to be difficult and maybe, cost money and, all these things. None of them really were palatable. And then we found the thing that we lost, and it solved the problem. So it was like a wonderful thing, but we just felt like it was kind of a good day, other than, it's, World War III starting, but it, sometimes days feel good, and this one felt pretty good. I did have at the end of the day a little bit of an episode, which I've got all these different meds now and different, not supplements, not meds, but, naturopathic kind of things. And, I'm able to avoid the kind of things that I already had, so that was good. And then I decided that I would do the sitting again, the 7th sitting, which I just did. And it, my heart rate's great now. It went up a little bit, before, and, not for a long period of time, but it was kind of, I was feeling a little unsettled, maybe a little anxiety. But I just redid the 7th sitting because I was, I did it late last night and I dozed off, and I don't know, I just felt like I would redo it. And just phenomenal. I feel just wonderful. I think this was a big day in a lot of different ways because of the, changes are like there's everything's going to be different. Like, the condition. And this happens with the meditations too, that everything changes after you go to a gathering and these types of things. You just, you come out a different person, and the world is different, and it's vibrating. Your trajectory has changed, and, all of a sudden your life is taking a turn. When you get married or you get a job or you move or, you have children. I mean, it necessarily, it doesn't have to be something like that, but there's just times in your life where things change and you're like, oh, this is never going to be the same. And, now with the World War III, that's, which is, starting to have all the stuff that's happening. That's one thing, but the conditions change. Like there's, there's pivotal days, and sometimes there doesn't have to be some milestone or big material event. It just has to be something changes and you notice it. There's a shift. Sometimes you see people differently. Maybe you've had a friend, someone like the opposite sex, someone you grew up with, and they were always your kind of friend or whatever. And then one day you realize that, there's chemistry there and love, and they're your spouse, and they're there the whole time. You never noticed them, and then all of a sudden there's a change in perspective, right? Or, somebody does something bad to you, or you find out something about them, or just something emerges, and your whole life changes, and because of this, your different point of view of your parent, your dad. You find out your dad was an alcoholic and he's been cheating on your mom, or something like this, right? There's these shifts, where there's like a new paradigm in your life, and these things happen. And for me, it's been this has been this period of time. With my heart racing, my heart getting up to 250 beats, those 2 days, and then, all the things, and just doing the playlist here and all the meditation, all the other stuff. And then, the stuff waiting for the prophecy to happen, and, waiting for this I first read this in 2005. So for 20 years, I knew something was going to come, and I didn't know what the severity was. Again, I'll read the prophecy here because it's a part of this playlist. And I feel really good about this playlist. And, I think over time, these wars always end badly. And, this one, I mean, they might start off good, but, the first two Iraq wars that we had, the first one was, kind of ended in a good way, Operation Desert Storm. But the second one, Bush was like mission accomplished. I'm going to talk about this in another voiceover. So these are all going on the Journey series. So this will be repetitive, but I mean, I talk about this with my, regular viewers. I guess I can put this, well, I don't know. I'll probably just do a new voiceover. Maybe I'll put this at the end of a video. But, the war went south after that. I'll talk about that more specifically tomorrow. The war went south after that. And so, at first it looked like mission accomplished, right? George Bush came in, and then things went south. And, a lot of these wars, a lot of these things, there's repercussions. The stuff that happened with Libya really bothered me. The way they took down Gaddafi, these things. And this thing with Iran, it's not going to go smoothly. It was not done for a legitimate reason. Iran was no real threat. America's screwed over Iran now a number of times. Regime change with Mossadegh in, I believe, the 1960s or 50s. Democratic elected moderate politician. And they took him out and then destroyed the country with the Shah of Iran. And now the country is the way it is because of America. And then all the ways America's been shitty to Iran since, just the tensions and the stuff that America's done, bullying them. Of course, Israel being a part of that, puppeting America, all that stuff. And so with all these things, it's going to end badly. There's no way this thing is going to end well. And, it's part of the Whispers Prophecies. It's going to be, this event is going to kick off a series of other events that are going to, destroy the world to whatever extent, right? Nuclear bombs. I mean, it's going to lead to nuclear war, and the magnetic field shifting, and a bunch of shit's going to happen, right? Like the whole, planet's going to be destabilized. So, and you can feel that kind of coming. But anyways, I really feel good about these playlists. So what I want to say is, so when that starts happening, people are going to get mad, and there's going to be hatred. There's already division and hatred, and Trump is, whatever he causes. And I mean, just all the anger towards the so-called elite, and now, Israel, and there's all this stuff that's happening. And, these next playlists, and, these playlists take a little, take some out of me. I'm glad to do them. I like doing them. I mean, there's no, issue, but I mean, they're intense. And, you just can't do one after the other, but in a short period of time, there's going to be the need for one with anger and one with hatred, and, these things. And so, there's going to be need for deeper cleaning and more intense, more commitment to people's practices, people's individual practices. Well, anyways, I'm getting a little tired here. It's already 11 o'clock. I didn't get a chance to finish this when I needed to, but like I said, I'm going to do one more voiceover to sort of sum everything up. I'm going to put that voiceover to that I did today about the Whispers of the Brighter World in here. And there'll be one more, and then I'll put this video up on Sunday. And yeah, that'll be great. Anyways, that's it for now. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Sunday, March 1st. I guess this will be the final voiceover in my for the fear and anxiety playlist. I'm a little bit out of it this morning. I had a little episode last night, and I guess this will be the final audio in the Gratefullness in the 255th Journey series. I don't know if I'll put this at the end of my next video too, because it's kind of substantial. But I'll save this audio because I just had a very vivid dream. I had a little bit of an episode again, my third one with the heart thing. It was less than, the heart really only went up like a high for maybe a minute or two. And I'm kind of working on being able to control it, but it's not just the heart thing. It's like a condition. It's like a migraine isn't just a migraine. It's like I'm a different, there's like a different condition. Like I just, it's a lack of serotonin. It's very migraine-esque, where there's other things going on that's not related to the heart, and the bloating in my stomach too is a factor in these things. But anyways, I did the meditation last night, the 7th meditation, and then I talked about that on another audio. And I really felt better after doing that. And then I had something happen while I was doing the 9 p.m. prayer. It was very odd that something would happen when I'm doing the meditation, the prayer. And then, there's a famous excerpt of Babaji's diary when he was young. Lalaji was working on him, making him making his him into whatever it was. And he felt what he called 2 jerks to his heart. Lalaji was restructuring his heart. And Lalaji said, if I give you a 3rd jerk, you'll be this, some spiritual, whatever it is. And Babaji said, well, you can do it if you want, but I don't think I'll live if you do. I don't think I'll, it was a jerk to the etheric heart, but it's affecting its physical heart. And so, was sometimes there's things that happen in the Sajmark system. I've always talked about this, that are physical, that are, something you have to go through to, whatever. So I can only hope that this is remaking my heart in some way. And that this is, well worth it. This thing I've gone through, and hopefully it's coming to an end. Been very intense February. And so I went to sleep, and, I slept well. It was like, sometimes when I have things, these things are related to how I felt with COVID, where I was dreading going to sleep because I'd wake up and I would be, just gasping for breath, and, it sucked because, like, I didn't want to go to sleep, and sleeping is how I got better. I always slept when I was sick, and it usually would help me. I'd feel better in the morning, but not with COVID. And so, especially the first one. And since then, there's been times that my heart has raced, over these past, whatever many years it is, 4 years since I had COVID. I guess I had COVID in 2020, so 6 years. Jesus Christ. 6 years, is it? So, where I could hear my heartbeat, and, when I'd be in bed, and it would kind of bug me for whatever reason when I, sort of was holding like a pillow or something to keep my arm up, so it would, I have to hold the pillow from whatever. But anyways, I slept really well, and then I woke up. My wife got up. I woke up, and I meditated and did the morning meditation, and then I went back to sleep. I did satsang, and I had a very vivid dream with Master Charji. Since I think there's only been the 2, the one where he made me a preceptor. He's been in a few dreams of mine, but that was really vivid and long, as was this one, and significant. Like these were, the one where he was making me a preceptor again in a dream, which, was a whole thing. When I, broke away from heartfulness and all that stuff. And so, in this dream, he was, really old, and he was sick, and he was he was dying, and he had one old guy taking care of him who looked worse than he did, and the old guy wasn't anybody I knew. Wasn't some I don't know if it was like somebody who was a servant or whatever. It was like but it wasn't a real person that I knew. That someone was around Chargy, and the old guy said to Chargy, and I went to like pay my respects and was talking to him. And, and the old guy said to him, everyone's left you. And Chargy goes, well, I have you. And Chargy, like, couldn't function. He was old. He can't see well at the end of his life, kind of thing. He would barely see out of one eye. He was blind in one eye, and, he had two kinds of cancer. I mean, when he was old, he was really sick a lot of the time, in a wheelchair, and he would pull it together to visit people and see them, like to be out with the people. I mean, the effort that he put. And, his son and Kamlish talked about it before Kamlish had turned on him later on, at the very end of his life. But he said to the guy, all I have is you. And I left, and I was very sad for him because he always loved being around people. He loved to have an entourage. He had a fear of being alone, and he was just really good in a crowd. And he made himself available as much as he could. Like he just, he gave people access to him. Everyone wanted to spend time with him. And he did that, up until he died. I mean, physically he was falling apart, in every possible way. And I heard some about he was going through and the effort he was still trying to make to be with people and, all this stuff and, do whatever he could spiritually for them. He was barely holding it together. He had bone cancer and maybe something, I don't know if it was prostate cancer or some other cancer. So he had two kinds of cancer. And, he had respiratory things where he couldn't breathe. And his whole life he had pain in his leg, which he attributed to a life where he was like Spartacus or somebody famous in the Greek thing, and he had been a slave with chains on his legs. And that he in this life he had pain in his legs that it's pain that he suffered. Kamlish said that the normal person, and Kamlish, of course, was not Chargy's fan, obviously what happened to that later, but he said in this talk, like he was yelling at everybody for being, for trying to push their way in and see him. And he said, like, none of you could bear the pain, physical pain that he's in right now. Like he's just in physical pain, like all the time. But anyways, like that wasn't, that was reality. That wasn't part of it. But I was sitting there feeling really sad for him that he's all alone because he just liked people and wanted to be around them. And that he's only got one person out of all these people, that wanted to be around with him, his entourage. And at first I was like, they all died. And I'm thinking they all died. But then I'm like, no, because he's still alive and he's no longer the master and Kamlish is the master. And they've left him. They've left him for Kamlish, right? And so, and I'm thinking that I should, what if this one guy dies, right? Like if this one guy dies and he has nobody, I should offer that I would come and take care of him, which I didn't think I'd do a very good job at because I'm not like a caretaker, but just I felt so grateful for everything he's done for me. Like I just, it was like all this gratitude and sadness for him and just, I felt so bad for him. Compassion welled up. And I said I should talk to my wife before I commit to coming to India and living for 2 or 3 months or whatever it takes, to help him go through the end of life stuff because he's got nobody around him. And I come back and I offer my services to him because I just feel bad. And, and I forget, I don't know if he said anything back to me because then it shifted. And then I was waking up, but I was still in the dream. And I thought about what if they made me the master or whatever. The first thing I would do is say to all these people that for their disloyalty that they would suffer, right? I would give a speech and talk about how, it was just embarrassing how disloyal they have all been. And how after all that he did for them and all the proclaims, all the, I've talked about this in audio, video, whatever it is. And I'm not like a vindictive person because I understand how our tough life is. And I understand like this is a very difficult situation with Chargy and Lology because Chargy's, dying wish was not Lology, Dodgy, that Chargy's dying wish was that everyone be loyal to Dodgy and don't put Dodgy through what he went through. Like he made sure that there would be a smooth transition. And Dodgy's the legitimate master of the system and president. He's been endorsed by the Whispers messages and by Chargy. Like he's legitimate. And so, like it's a hard thing for people to get over. It was hard for me because, it's like Chargy suffered so much because of the way that Babaji people treated him because they didn't want him to be the master and they, whatever. And they, they tried to kill him and poison him and they, just horrible. And so, there was this thing and I understand it. And there's no reference to this possibility in the literature. There's no way to guide people for people to figure out how to deal with it. Like a lot of people are meditating on Chargy's form, but they're still doing the Sizemore system, and some people just quit altogether, but they don't know how to deal with it. And so I was thinking about, so I'm like halfway awake and I'm thinking about that. I'm not sure which came first, this idea that I think the last thing was when I thought that I would give a speech and say to them, you guys are all going to suffer for your, for whatever. Because, I felt bad for the pain that they caused him. Like just, whatever pain that, this disloyalty. And I don't know if it is, or certainly, after he died, I don't think it matters to him on a soul level. But, just shitty. But then I think before that, maybe after that, I'm just a little bit unclear. But, because this thing just happened with Trump starting the war with Iran yesterday. For those people listening to this in the future. So the big event that was going to happen, Whispers of the Brighter World, which I don't know how Heartfulness is even dealing with that because, to the day, 25, quarter of a century, Babaji predicted 2001, that this would be an event that happened that would set off a chain of events that would lead to massive, destruction and overhaul of the system and change everything. And so I don't know if they're even acknowledging that, even though they, Babaji's, Dodgy's a big Whispers person. So I don't even know what people are talking about or not. So, but in the dream, I remembered there was this guy. And I think I'm like maybe I'm just waking up. It's a little unclear, but it's very vivid. Like, I've trained the dream as much as I can, like every detail. And there's a guy who used to contact me, and he kind of knew that Dodgy sucked, and like all these people are flipping out. He was sort of a younger guy in the inner circle with Chargy. He was around Chargy and, whatever it was. And he found my videos before I started to criticize Dodgy. And he contacted me, and he didn't get the truther stuff. Like he was just, the Indian from Chennai, young guy, nice guy, but, just not a truther. But he liked what I was saying about everything else. And then when I, started to criticize Dodgy, there was people there in Chennai all suffering, and he was, aware of it. But he used to post things. He made friends with me on Facebook. He used to post things. It was people who were around Chargy, and he would get access to their diaries. Like they would give him their diaries, and he would publish them. He would publish different interactions they had with them. And he had this one thing he sent to me, and he wrote something to me about it because he was, because of this stuff I was covering as a truther. And Chargy was, he had his master's cottage, and there was somebody out on the porch, and Chargy walked out, and they were alone, which is very odd, which just didn't happen that much where you got one-on-one time with Chargy. And they had a conversation, and it was about, like, nuclear war. And Chargy said that he was holding the minds of all the people in the world, all the leaders with nuclear weapons, and keeping them calm and keeping them from fucking having nuclear war. Like, it was like something he had to do constantly. Like, just, there's things that you do with your mind inside Schmarg where you might you have a child and you look after them like there's some distance from you, or they're somebody in your family's going, like like somebody is in some kind of crisis, and Chargy you know would wrap his mind around the person, like his thought. He would make sure like there's a way to prevent these things from happening, or whatever it could be, that whatever might happen, at least that God would be with them. I mean, it's things that you can do, not just the master of the system, but we all can do that. You can wrap people in a bubble of love, and make sure they feel supported when they're going through something. If they're not, either they're not physically close, or you're keeping people in your consciousness, right? Just to, you're just like your disembodied soul is supporting them, just like you have souls around you that aren't in physical form, like what people call angels, and they can support you through something or help you, whatever it might be. That's why you pray for people. But this is something where you're an active participant in helping or protecting somebody or doing something. An example of this is some guy went to stay at Babaji's house and visit him, and he came and he said, "Can I stay an extra week?" And Babaji said yes. And then he said, "Can I stay an extra 2 weeks?" And Babaji said, "No. He said you didn't lock your door at your house when you left, and I've been keeping my mind on it to make sure that nobody breaks in and steals all your shit, but like I can't fucking do it forever. You gotta go home and fix this." And in India, they have these locks where they have a bolt, because there's a lot of crime in these places, where people go break in your house, and they have bars on the windows and things, in many places, so that they can't break through the window. It's like a different level of thing. Like, it's not scary in India, but there's a lot of thievery, right? Like, it's not like there's thugs and you walk down the street and you're scared of and you're bigger than most of the people there, but they do have a lot of breaking and entering kind of thing. And so they have these metal latches where there's the deadbolt, but around the deadbolt is a metal box so that people can't cut the deadbolt, right? That people can't get access to the deadbolt. So it goes over the door. So when you close, this box goes over the door and hides the lock from people. And what the guy did was he locked the door, but it didn't go into the deadbolt. The deadbolt didn't go into the hole, the metal hole that it's supposed to. And so it seemed like it was locked, but the door was basically open, and it was free. So people just pull it open because he had missed the deadbolt because he wasn't careful or whatever. So he got home, and that's what would happen. Like, so that kind of thing, right? And so I was thinking how, that all these people, Daji included. Now, Daji has touched the feet of Modi. He's been after Modi for a while. He was wanted validation. Of course, he was hobnobbing with Deepak Chopra, who's now been Epsteined, and he's he kissed ass to every politician and celebrity. He really went after these people. Chargy never did it, and neither did any of the masters. They didn't look famous from famous and powerful people because they were beyond them. They were so much far beyond these people. And so, all these people, Dodgy and these people were all like upward climbers. Lots of them, they post on Facebook when Dodgy would bring in somebody famous. I'm not friends with them anymore on Facebook, but they would post pictures of that famous person, whoever it was, with they'd get a selfie with them so they could show it on Facebook so they could feel like big people. People who need validation from famous people. I cover it every day here how these famous and powerful people are lower. Like I was talking about Joe Rogan saying, that these people are all jealous and they're all criticizing someone who's above them. And I'm like, these people, you're not above anybody. Many of us who've had more than one life, have had many lives, had a life as a king or as a celebrity, and we realized it's a false promise and it's a distraction away from your soul. It may be something you have to go through to realize that being rich and powerful isn't your goal here. But everyone's gonna, in their first couple lives, they're gonna look up and they're gonna say, if only I was rich and powerful, I'd be so happy. And then they have a life like that and they realize they're not, hopefully, but some people just get stuck in it and they just continue life after life, and they're, looking for false gold, looking for fool's gold, right? And I was thinking how these lackeys, a lot of the these inner circle people, a lot of the Indians are Republican. You know, it's like Kash Patel, and there's that guy who ran for president or whatever his name was. I forget what his name was. Bobby Jindal, remember that guy, Bobby Jindal. But there's a lot of Indians that become Republicans. They just it's it's because they're very conservative in their country, so it makes sense. And they go over the top, like Kash Patel dancing with the partying with the hockey. They're just over the top. And I thought about how all these guys, Dodgy and his people that used to be around Chargy, they all were around Chargy, not because they loved him or they were grateful for what he did or they loved the system. They just, or maybe they did a little bit, maybe there was something there. They had a spiritual side too. But part of it was that they were upward climbers and they just wanted to be around the master because he was a big, important man. And they would all, they'd be all lackeys to Trump and Modi and Netanyahu, and they'd all be endorsing this thing. Many of them are anti-Muslim, they're Hindu, Dodgy doing the RSS, which was a paramilitary, this thing I talked about recently in a video audio. And so I was thinking about how they all would just be, even though they know that there's a whispers message saying that this is going to fucking bring down the world, but they'd still be kissing his ass. And that's when I thought about how I would say, like if I was, not that I want to be the master or anything like that, that's not, but if I were, and even though I don't like to be vindictive and I like to, I understand how hard it is to be a human being. And I have my own, like I'm not above my own, my own just struggles with how, embracing my spiritual side. Like we all struggle with it. Like we all have our human side. So I'm not, like I don't care about these other people's, their indiscretions. It's not it's between them and God, right? That's how I make all these things. You can pray for people to suffer and you can curse them. I mean, there's all these things you can do. The whole Mahabharata exists, the whole story is based in multiple curses that create this story. Without the curses, there'd be no Mahabharata. Like these Indian saints, and there's one like particular guy who's just like kind of grumpy and he's just cursing everybody all the fucking time. Right? And these curses, create the conflict in the thing. So, and you can do spiritual warfare, you can do all that stuff, but I'm not, like I don't even think about it. Like it's not something that's none of my business. I don't get into a situation where I'm, the judge and jury or, whatever it is. Like it's between them and God. Like unless something was ordered to me or whatever, there'd have to be something where I felt was, I was given instructions to do something, spiritually. But for the most part, I think that things are going according to plan. And it's just the way it is. I mean, it is painful for me to watch these pieces of shit in the heartfulness thing, destroy the Sajmark system, which I've talked about. But anyway, so I had that thought, like, I would say to them, like, this is bad what you did. Like, the people who are disloyal to Chargy, like some of them are just confused. They don't know what to do. But then some people have just jumped ship over to Dodgy, and then they're allowing Dodgy to destroy Chargy's legacy, even participating in it, right? So somebody, the Dodgy truther, told me that he talked to a couple of the people at the ashrams that were managers of the ashram, and Dodgy told him to destroy all Chargy's books, all of his published books that were there, just destroy all of them. And the people didn't want to do it, and they said, well, I'll get somebody else to do it. Like, I'll fire you and get someone else there if you're not going to do it. So that's fucked up shit that he did. So anyways, so the first thing is, so I wake up and I'm like, I meditated for about 5-10 minutes, but I wanted to make sure I retain this dream, right? And I looked at my phone and there was an email of someone who wrote me about the Sajmar Gratefullness. I don't know what it was. And I, just scanned it because I was just groggy waking up. And it was a young woman who, I guess she had done Heartfulness when I talked about it years ago. And then she left and started doing Gratefulness with me and then went back to Heartfulness with Dodgy. I think this is what it said. I'm not, I'm paraphrasing. Usually I wouldn't say anything, but it was, part of it, this whole thing. I wouldn't say something about email. And the end of it, she said something like she had just done this fear and this playlist. She had just done all the meditations and had a profound experience with it, which I'm sure people would because it's an intense time. I mean, it's not an accident. and she was reading, I guess, said something about being a Christian and trying to understand that needing a guru and these things, and I guess asking me to be her guru, and I'm like, that's not possible because I'm not a guru. Like I can't be something that I'm not, right? Like I just don't have the personality for it. But I am a preceptor in that sense, the way preceptors used to be. I mean, that's what I'm doing now with gratefulness meditation, and that's it's not a guru, but it's a somebody who helps guide people and do that. So I mean that is basically what I'm doing with the I mean I'm keeping the thing alive. So, but I, in terms of that was all interesting that came like that was the first thing I saw when I woke up. All right. So, I guess that's going to wrap this up. I don't know what else to say here. This is the end of at least 2 videos, the 255th edition of the Journey series. This is going to go in that as well as the, the playlist. But I very intense time. And I can see that there's a need for, when things go south, like I was saying, this thing's going south. Like it just can't not go south. I mean, aside from the predictions and the prophecies and what Babji says is going to happen, if you just look at Trump and Netanyahu and what's happening and the way they're going about a war with no real justification, and all the bad things that have happened in the past with regime change, and it might not happen immediately, but it happens, and that this is, there's a woman, her name is Catherine Austin Fitz, and I'll talk about this a little bit on my regular channel too today. But she was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Now she used to be, and she was one of the good guests Alex Jones used to have on. Like Alex Jones used to have quality guests when he was the only game in town. I guess she has her own thing now. I told my wife about her, and she listens to her. She was in charge of the finances under like Reagan or somebody. What Bush won, I don't know. She was a Republican, and she was, she had some kind of job in the federal government. And she talks about, this in terms of finances. And she was talking about this war in terms of the central banks, and that Iran was outside the central bank system, and all these wars were, the thing I talked about in a video recently where Wesley Clark said we're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years, and all those countries they weren't aligned with the central bank. This digital currency that they want to do in the global banking system, and the, petrodollar, where you sell American, where you sell oil in the American dollar. Of course, I've talked about this significantly, quite a bit with Libya and how Gaddafi wanted to start a gold dinar to sell his oil in a gold dinar, which was a, Arabic Muslim currency, and get away from the petrodollar, and that's why they took him out, right? Because they couldn't have that. These are financial wars, and so that's part of what's happening here. And she talked about how Iran was supplying China with all this oil, and that China's pissed now because of this BRICS thing, and they're trying to get away from America's hold on oil and the petrodollar. And Iran was selling this oil, and they have all these resources to China outside of the petrodollar, and that is a part of it, right? And so when you do something like this, you don't care what happens to the people in the country. You have to take it away their government, because it always fails. Like it always goes south. They have thug rule, gang rule. You try to put in a puppet that never takes. It just, there's no, like Trump saying to the people in Iran, go and take over the government, and you guys will just, like they can, creating a government is hard as fuck, right? I talked about this. This is why I say it's pointless to fight back the way some truthers think we should fight back, because you can take down a government. Like that's somewhat easy. It's not all that easy, but we could take down the American government. The American people could take down, just get rid of the government the way it is. Just like, go full mob. And, the people have it in them to do it. Like, you need cooperation and anger and hatred to rise to such a level. And just take down, they kill all the leaders. I mean, this happens in kingdoms. You've seen it happen in communist China, in communist Russia. You've seen what happens. And there's some kind of movie I was watching where, they're showing all these people just being executed by the angry mob in China when they took over. All these people, sometimes they were just college professors, people with no, and just all the torture and all the shit they were doing. to force people to adapt and to their new party. But installing a government. I mean, you think of what happened in those places, and you think of how Russia is now and China is now, and where they were when they threw over the monarchy. It's not better, right? A lot of people have suffered, and there's no rule of law, and you have to get everybody on board, and you usually have to be very violent to get everyone to agree, and not everyone's going to agree, and it's never some utopia. It's not like it gets fucking better. It never gets better. That's the problem. Like, you can take down a bad government, and maybe you should, but replacing it's almost impossible. And you look at all these regime change places, but none of that stuff matters because, you're destabilizing a country because they're not cooperating with your financial hierarchy, your whatever you're doing, your financial, tyranny that's happening, and all the rest of it, your system that you're trying to impose on everybody. But there's laws, there's spiritual. It's not backed by God, and God clearly, the plan is according to Babaji, like he did this work as a spiritual master, Babaji, the second master of the Sajmark system, that he did this work, and this work was done to take down a system, and he was ordered to take down this system. This is back in the 1950s and 60s. Do the spiritual work so this would happen, and that there would be a new system that would come out of it, out of the bones and ashes of the current system. It'd take hundreds of years, and there's going to be extraterrestrial, like alien interventions, and there's going to be a genetic mutation, and like a lot of shit's going to happen, and people embracing their spiritual nature, and a reduction of population, and chaos, and just a world that doesn't resemble anything like we have now. Like it's just going to all be transformed in a way to motivate people to embrace their higher nature and evolve and go to a higher level, which is a painful process. Evolution's painful. Spiritual evolution particularly is painful physically and in just every possible way. It's just painful to you're like forced to become something out of pain and suffering, out of trauma and crisis. You're forced to rise to a higher level. Like it's just unfortunately the way that happens here. Not unfortunately, it's just that you're given a blessing. You're able to jump leaps and bounds where it would take, with no resistance in the spiritual plane of existence, it would take many, many, many more years to get the kind of evolution you can get here, when where you're molded and forged in pain and suffering. Right? That's just what happens. That's what it is. Right? It's just there for people. And so, this is what we're going through, and that's what's happening. And you got this, complete bonehead in Trump who's just, thinks he's great, and he's always been a failure, a loser, a guy who goes bankrupt, a guy who runs things into the ground, a guy that's selfish and abuses people, and then rearranges reality to make him feel like he's successful. A guy who's just built for failure, and he just keeps on failing upwards so he can fail at a higher level, and now on a global level, right? And with the world, collapse of the system being a part of it. Anyways, it's a good note to wrap all this up. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.